Hi everyone, this is Josh Culp. We are doing Daf Shui. We are on Daf Mem Bet of Masechet Gittin. So first of all, I apologize that this video is coming out a few days late. I am here at Machane Ramah in New England, and things got a little busy, and I lost track of time. So here we are, a little bit late, no big deal. And I wanted to just talk a little bit about the Braita that appears, that's discussed throughout the first half of this daf, and then if there's a little bit of time left to talk about the nature of the second daf. I think a lot of what's going on, the second part of the daf, a lot of what's going on here is comparing the relationship of a slave to a master with something that we know a lot more about, and that is divorce, the relationship, or how we sever the relationship between a man and his wife. I know that it's not like a nice thing to say, but there are some similarities between marriage and slave ownership, namely that we have a relationship between the people's personhood. Slavery doesn't just mean that the person works for another person. It is a change in the halachic status of the slave. The slave goes from non-Jew to Jew. A slave is obligated in the mitzvot. A slave has marital obligations. How our Gemara is really asking, how is that terminated? How much is that like the termination of a marriage, and how much is that different? So I'll explain this basically using the two main issues that come up on these dapim. The first issue is freeing half of a slave. Rabbi says he has acquired himself, and the sages say he has not. And then we get Rabbah's limitation of that and saying, look, that's only a case, the sages say that you can't free half a slave only in a case where the master retains control over half of the slave. But if the master gets rid of both halves of the slave, let's say frees one half and sells or gives away the other half of the slave, then it works. And I think Rabbah and the Braita itself are questioning the similarities between slave emancipation and divorce. There is no such thing as divorcing half of a woman. When it comes to women, there are sugyot that bring this up, but marriage has to be complete. Shi'er b'kinyan is a problem if he doesn't acquire the entire woman, meaning fully marry her. And when he divorces her, there is a famous machloket that will appear later in the Masechet about trying to divorce her in half, meaning allowing her to be divorced but not freeing her to have relations with all other men. I don't want to get too far into those discussions, but I think that's what's going on over here as well. Can a master free half of his slave, which would make it very different from divorce? And Rabbah says, look, as long as he's getting rid of his control over the slave, then he can free half the slave and just sell another half to another person. There's some pushback against that, but I think Rabbah is the most clear statement. Very briefly, the second half of the daf deals with the necessity of the document. And if you read those lines carefully, I think that they're literally asking, does slave emancipation have to work like divorce? There is no such thing as divorce without a get. A husband can't say to his wife, you are divorced, and thereby divorce her. He actually has to give her a get, a written document. The question that our Gemara is really asking is, does slave emancipation work in the same way? Or can a man emancipate his slave, and the slave is no longer his kinyan, no longer his property, already without a document? And main ramifications of that are going to be what happens to the slave if the slave is, let's say, killed by an ox or by another person. And also, can the slave continue to eat truma, which are all dioraita from the Torah ramifications for someone either being considered a slave or not being considered a slave. So both of these sections, I think, are having abstract discussions about the nature of slave emancipation and how similar it is to divorce and how different it is from divorce.